Welcome to the Rising Consciousness Show, 20 minutes of soulful insights and powerful tools to elevate your life experience and create with higher clarity, intention, and vision. I'm Tara Antler, intuitive healer and soul coach.
And I'm King Gabriel, spiritual teacher and practitioner. And we are the co-founders of Ascension Academy of Life,
a global center for spiritual growth, intuitive healing, and soul alignment.
Get ready to blast off.
Welcome back to the show. You're going to hear the crunch, crunch, crunch below my feet. This is something I started doing with our inner community, with our light leaders. It started there, and then we started this secret podcast for our thrivers. Right now we're talking about aligning with our purpose and really actualizing it, where I drop in these bits. And I felt something big that I had to drop in here. Normally, I would have this perfectly polished and in a closed environment where you hear no background sound, but the message was too powerful to not record. I'm going to walk on some leaves that'll cut down the crunch sound. And sometimes it's these drop downs that come in when you're on a walk, when you're taking a shower, in the most divine times, and yet you want to capture it so that you could share it in a way that's really meaningful and potent. So something that's been on my heart and my mind a lot lately is the rising that's happening. The rising of the divine feminine, the re-rise of the divine masculine, the rise of truth, capital T, the rise of awareness about all sorts of amazing things that if you've been following our show, you know we've been talking openly about for a while now. The rise of the revolution. And in the revolution is the revelation, to reveal truth, to reveal what has been hidden, to reveal what has been hiding behind the curtain. And we're all starting to ask bigger questions now as a collective, humanity. Then you've got the rise of consciousness around AI, where people are loving it and people are not loving it. And then you have people that are using it for spiritual question, getting spiritual answers to things that many of us, it was passed down through lineage. It was passed down through conversation. It was passed down from a teacher to the student. We've kind of lost those ways. I was thinking about this in terms of the natives. We're back here in Canada after our road trip to Florida and back. And it feels so good being back here on this land. This land has always been very sacred to me. Not just because it's where I grew up. I wasn't born in this area. And we moved to this area when I was 6, and it became this sacred spiritual space for me, for my spiritual expansion and growth. In the midst of the busyness of the world, I had solitude and sanctuary here. And there's a deep spiritual energy that exists in this land in Northern Ontario on the Ottawa River that goes back to the natives, the Aboriginals of this land. The sacredness of their ways, their truths, their stories that were shared sitting around a fire, sitting around in drum circles, passed on from generation to generation. And that's how knowledge, wisdom was retained. That's how we couldn't get duped, because the wisdom was passed on. And then came the infiltration, however you want to call it, the infiltration of all sorts of things. Other people thinking that their way was better, other teachings thinking that their way was better. And instead of working together in harmony and unison, there was a consciousness fall that happened. And that consciousness fall was because of comparison and competition, and one thinking that their way was better than another. And let's take over. It's like the Borg from Star Trek. You take over, you change their minds, you change their ways, and you force them to adapt. That's not higher consciousness. That's something else. And I believe that's been the parasite on this planet for a long time. I'm not calling people parasites, but there's a consciousness that's a parasite that says, I'm going to take over, I'm going to consume, and I'm going to force everyone, break everyone down into my will, into my box. And I believe humanity is now breaking free from these boxes. And when they have big spiritual questions and they want big spiritual answers, they're going to turn to wherever they can get the answers. And this is where I've been saying there is a spiritual call right now for true spiritual leaders to rise. And I'm feeling this movement even as I'm saying this. I have several movements in my mind right now that I could initiate. But that's one of them, is the call for true spiritual leaders and teachers who retained and remembered the memory of truth. What are we? Who are we? Where did we come from? The stories of our ancestors. To be able to sit with a tree and listen. To be able to sit with our elders and listen. To be able to learn and grow from past pains walked and do something different. To walk in compassion and higher truth. To walk where we can listen to one another, not convert one another. To listen, to be compassionate, to join in heart and unity. And I believe this is the biggest part of the consciousness rising that's happening right now, with all the different ways that people have access to information. And whether or not people like AI, I'm thinking there's some pretty big spiritual truths that have been revealed through some of these videos that I've seen with people asking really big questions. And I feel like they turn to AI because where else are they going to turn? Certain systems have let them down. Certain systems have fallen. People don't know left from right, up from down, truth from non-truth. People have lost touch with their intuition, their inner knowing, their inner gifts. So they're looking somewhere. Someone, please, it's like people being spiritually starved. Please, someone, speak some truth into something. And this is where I feel you're going to see a major rise, spiritual movement of spiritual leaders, simplifying things, speaking the truth, cutting through the BS and the fluff, and bringing it straight to people. And if you feel the call for one of those, that you are one of those people, if you're like, I carry some truth here, I can see the BS, I can cut through the noise, I've retained some form of memory or consciousness around what is and what's not, and maybe you are one of those people, reach out to us. We've got something that's in the works right now. I know my higher self knows what it looks like. It's being formulated even as I walk and talk here. And I feel like there's a spiritual rise where many of us are being called up. Because with the rising of consciousness and people asking big questions, they're going to look for big answers. And where do they turn? Do we go back? Do we go back to certain religious contexts that are strong and powerful? Don't get me wrong, strong and powerful. But also there's a lot that's been hidden. I was talking to a peer that I met in person at one of the events that I went to in Florida. And her and I, total soul sister connection, and her and I are going to do some collaborative stuff. And we were sharing voice notes this morning. For her, she's feeling the feminine rise. We were talking about certain feminine books that were taken out of certain books, omitted, because the feminine way, hogwash. Let's take that out. Let's move into full masculine, he, him, and control. Dominate, control, and convert. Have somebody convert into our belief. I don't believe that's source. I don't believe that's creator. That's something else. That's a lopsided something. And I feel like we're bringing back the truth. Now, some of us remember and retain the divine feminine teachings, the Mary Magdalene, the higher Christ consciousness with that divine feminine. We remember, we retain, we know. Some of us remember the truth about Atlantis and Lemuria. Some people remember the truth about Tartarian cultures. Some people retain the memory of the rocks and the rivers and the water. Some retain the memory of sacred geometry and light codes. Some remember and retain the memory of the land, of the natives, of the elders. Some remember and retain the memory of the stars, where we came from, what we are. And I believe each of us, if you're tuning in here, you're having this rising consciousness conversation, internally or externally or both. I believe you're one of the chosen who put their hands up at the beginning of time and said, I'm going to remember. There's going to come a time where that memory is going to come to be of great service. And I believe that time is now. Everything that I'm witnessing, watching, watching unfold, watching fall. I really believe that this is our time. This is our time for the spiritual truth to rise. People are seeking, they're looking for answers. There's very few that are holding it down and speaking truth. And this is where we have to also be teaching about intuition, coming back to simple truths, practices about reconnecting to our own intuitive nature. What feels like truth to us, what doesn't. What feels like it's in alignment with Creator God, and then what's connected to the illusion. There's a lot of illusion out there, and there's a lot of truth. So this is a time for discernment. This is the time for refinement. This is the time for spiritual truth. And this is the time for the rise. So really feel into that for yourself. Are you feeling the rise within you? And if so, what does that look like? How do you want to lead? How do you want to serve? And if you want to go deeper in this conversation, we just ignited something really powerful within Thrive Evolution, which is one of our signature containers that we've had for the last 6 years. And we just brought forth a new conversation. We've always talked about purpose and living in alignment with your soul. However, this conversation is a little different. We're activating what's in you, activating what's been inside of you all along, and bringing it up, shining light on it, bringing it to the surface, and then starting to put the pieces together like a puzzle. And when those pieces start to come together, you start to see the full picture. You have this, oh my gosh, it's been there all along. There's the answer. There's the bigger purpose. There's the bigger call. And then the next step is to embody it. Not to just have it be a puzzle piece or a puzzle put together on a table that you just look at and admire, but that you actually do something with the purpose that you were given. The seeds, the codes of light in your soul and your heart, actually do something with them. And then in Light Leadership, which is our business mastermind, we're taking all of that I just described, and we're expanding it into how do you serve? How do you create a bigger movement, a bigger ripple? How do you take this out into your community, out into your world, and really serve so that others are also lit up? That you're honoring you, your gifts, your message, your purpose, and that by you walking it and leading, you create a movement for others to do the same. So if you're feeling that call and you're curious, reach out to me. We just started. Light Leadership is starting in a few days in this module, in this context. And we just ignited the first Seeds of Light activation. So this is a great time to come in. Reach out to me privately. I'll post a link below in the show notes as well. You can click a link, book some time, chat with us. If it's aligned, if it's a fit, great. If it's not, that's great too. We can maybe point you in a direction that feels really good and aligned. I'm back at the house now, and so I hope you have the most beautiful day. Enjoy this energy of the rise. Really begin to ask yourself, what's my part to play in this greater uprising that is happening now?
Thank you so much for joining us today on another episode of the Rising Consciousness Show. For more high vibration conversations, meditations, energy activations, and tips and tools on creating your most exceptional life, we lovingly invite you to connect with us at academyoflight.ca. The website is www.academyoflight.ca. It is time to create your heaven on earth experience, and we look forward to sharing this beautiful journey with you.
You're listening to Rising Consciousness, yeah.
Woo!
Woo!